being autistic means being different, not less.
Oh, yeah.
We do what's called unschooling. So unschooling basically is child-led learning. Don't listen to society. Do what you know is right for your own family.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Noongar Wadandi Mort. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Scratch the surface and everyone has a story. Welcome, Kaya, to the Wisdom of Women.
It's often said that being a mother is one of the most important roles that we can have in life. And Tanya Princi is a mother of 7 children, and she is now using their experiences to challenge our education system to do better.
Welcome, Tanya. And now you have a big journey to talk about and the challenges you have faced after your kids were diagnosed with autism and ADHD.
Yeah, look, Tanya, what was happening in your life around the time that your children were first diagnosed with autism? How was it, that first delivery? What was it like?
Well, it was a long journey. So things started going wrong for one of my children when they were 5. But I didn't actually know what was going on. I assumed there was a lot of anxiety going on, which there was, but I didn't understand that there was something more. So it actually took us quite a while to receive the diagnosis because waiting lists are extremely long. So even once you realise something's wrong, it then takes a couple of years to
it's
get
crazy,
the diagnosis.
that health system, isn't it?
It really is. So they were diagnosed at 10. The day they were diagnosed was very difficult for them because everyone thought there was something wrong with them. You know, like if I'm autistic, that means there's something wrong with me and people think I'm wrong. That then led to school refusal. So basically never went back to school from that day. Because they felt that the school was directing the diagnosis, but it wasn't. It was a collaborative decision. And then one diagnosis led to another. One of my children was also really struggling with school refusal, school drop-offs. You know, they're the child that were peeled off you and sort of pushed away from the parent.
And as a parent, you experience in that to a degree. I know I did with each of my children as well, you know, and you think, oh, no, well, that's just the natural process of your child.
That's right. You don't realise that there's something more going on because you think, oh, that lots of kids get upset at drop-off. You know, you don't realise there's something more to it. It wasn't until their school psychologist suggested that they were assessed for autism that we look into that. And I was like, well, that's funny because my other child's just been diagnosed, so it kind of made sense. And then once I started unravelling what autism was, I was like, oh, but that's also that child and that's also that child. Really? That's also me. So we all received diagnosis, all 8 of us within 2 years.
Wow.
So it was a really big couple of years for us.
That's quite incredible, isn't it, to have that all at once? What is the feeling like? Was it to a degree relief because you understood?
Absolutely relief, because when you realise that you're different, and you know that from, you know, autistic people know that from when they're little. You know, we are different. We're not quite the same as everybody else. It's just this feeling that you have, you know, little perceptive things that you pick up that people do things differently or things come more easily to other people. You're like, I can't do that. I can't sort of socialise the way they do or be in large groups the way people can, and, you know, you feel uncomfortable. So to know that there's nothing actually wrong with you, you just belong to a different, not category, it's not like that, but like a different tribe of people. Yeah. And there's actually a lot of other people like you as well. So you're not actually wrong or broken or don't fit in, you're just in a different tribe.
That's an incredible number of years then, isn't it, that you have gone through as a person, and particularly for children as well, if you've got all those feelings of not quite fitting in, adjusting yourself. Yeah. So you're talking everything from self-esteem to everything.
Yeah, it's a real journey because you start off, my first thing was, great, I'm not a broken person. I am, I just do things differently because, you know, when you've got ADHD, you're always late and you're always disorganised and you're always talk too much, and and you're constantly being told these things. You're always like, you're this person, you're that person. So to find out actually I'm not a broken neurotypical person, I'm actually just someone with ADHD, and those things, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you can't be different. You are who you are.
Yeah.
So to know that, their ADHD traits or their autistic traits, it actually makes you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, I'm just different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So different needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your brain just works differently.
And you
It's
bring
not
something
wrong.
different,
Yeah.
and instead of thinking negatively about yourself, you go, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I might not be good in that area, but I'm bloody good in this area.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I suppose that's the other thing as well, highlighting how you have talents in other areas, like recognising how your the way that your brain works differently can actually be quite incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something in ADHD called and autism called hyperfocus, and that is like a superpower. Like you cannot think about anything else for days, and just the what you can achieve in that period of hyperfocus is intense. It's really incredible. So, you got to look at the positives.
Plus,
Yeah, of course you do.
And there are so many people that we're now finding out in the public sphere who are autistic or ADHD or something else within the spectrum of life. Then you go, oh yeah, but they do amazing things,
Absolutely,
and they've had to overcome the stigma of being different. Now I feel, I don't know if it's true, there's more acceptance and understanding that, oh, no, that's okay. We can work with that. I know you've got a long way to go, but, with education in particular, but there's starting to be more of an understanding that it's more common.
Yeah, that's right. So, back in the day, autism had a very small window of diagnosis. So it was, the people who were rocking in the corner, non-verbal, and of course that is autism. But
to an extreme,
they have opened it up. That's right, but they've opened it up to a spectrum now, so they understand that a lot more people fit in that category.
And you can still have amazing progresses and things in life that are completely will blow us away because of their trait. Some people,
yes,
because I'm like this, I can do this. Like you said, with that hyper focus. And
so getting back to that understanding that it's different, it's not less.
Yeah.
by
Yeah,
any means.
absolutely,
Yeah, and in fact, in some cases, directed in the right way, it can actually be more.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's lots of stories, of non-verbal people who are absolutely brilliant. Like just because you can't communicate in the way that everyone else can doesn't mean that you don't have absolute,
Capability.
absolutely. Yeah.
So looking through the 7 children, are they all pretty similar with their diagnosis, or are they? So talk to us about some of that.
And that's what makes it really, well, for me, it made it really difficult to understand that it was all one thing. It was all autism because they are all so very different. But obviously there are commonalities to the diagnosis. It's just that it presents differently in different people. So you can have some autistic people who are happy on their own. They don't want to be with a lot of other people. They don't need to be with a lot of people. They feel very satisfied being on their own. To other people who want to be people all the time and are highly social, but they're still autistic. So, it's not as simple as what people think it is.
No, it's not. Is it?
and you've got a combination of lots of different personalities and
absolutely. I've got some very highly social kids, and then I've got kids who just prefer to be on their own all the time.
I imagine then on a day-by-day basis, that can be quite challenging to accommodate all these different needs.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And because we homeschool, we're home 24/7 with each other. So trying to make sure everybody's happy and everyone gets their own sensory needs met, because some really like to make noise because that fills their bucket. And then I've got others who are really hypersensitive to noise, so they don't like hearing the noise. So it could be a bit of conflict.
All right. I imagine, as we've spoken earlier, it is quite a journey to have progressed from getting the diagnosis for all the kids and then, though, going through the process of actually having to withdraw them from the education system because the education system as it exists is not accommodating to the needs. So, like I said, I know it's complicated, but can we go down that path just a little bit in understanding the process that you had to go through and how it was so difficult?
Yeah. So again, it was different for all of my children. So out of the 7 kids, 6 of them have had school refusal over their school life. Some didn't develop school refusal till they were year 9, so they'd made it relatively through school.
Yeah.
And then my youngest ones developed it at 6. So, it's been different. They have different abilities to cope. Some of them could cope more, and then some of them were like, I can't cope with this at all. So with my youngest, they're twins. They didn't go to kindy because I knew they wouldn't cope away from me. They have extreme separation anxiety. We tried daycare, that didn't work. I tried going to playgroups, that didn't work. I couldn't peel them off me, so there wasn't much point going. So I knew kindy wasn't going to work, so we missed that completely. And then we went to pre-primary. By sort of 4th term of pre-primary, I just knew there was no way they could go to year 1. They weren't socially ready. They were, the children who were being peeled off me still every day.
Yeah.
If their teacher wasn't there and they had a relief teacher, they couldn't go to class. They'd have complete meltdowns, running away, all that stuff. So I made the decision to repeat pre-primary because I had an amazing pre-primary teacher. So I thought, let's get them another year. And they were also end June babies. So labour prem, but they were due end of June. So they were the youngest. So I thought, that's okay. We'll just do another year of that. So we did another year of pre-primary. Year 1, by the end of term 1, we had school refusal. So I just knew they wouldn't cope. So they had 6 months off school because they just basically wouldn't go. It's not that I wasn't willing to take them. They wouldn't go to school. And then we found a new school. So we went to a smaller, more country school. That went really well for 1 term because it was a pre-primary year 1 split class. So it was still basically pre-primary.
Yeah.
And then they went to year 2 and again, first day back, we had school refusal. So it was a real process to try and get them back. The school worked with us really well. They were very accommodating. Oh gosh, how much should I say?
There's so much there, isn't there?
Yeah, and so needless to say, it didn't work out in the end.
Yeah. So looking generally then overall though, for children who are in the autism spectrum to a degree who aren't coping within the normal education system, what were the options that were available to you? Because, as a parent, this must be an absolute nightmare. Your kids are, are going through this. They're emotionally, challenged and I imagine you must have been exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely exhausted because it wasn't only them. It was how many other children at the time? I think at one stage it was all 6 of them, which, makes me sound like a bad parent. It makes me sound like I just can't get my kids to school. But it wasn't like that, These children were in absolute distress. Yeah. And I felt as a parent, I can't send my children somewhere where they're upset. I listened to them. So I contacted the education department when my son developed school refusal. He was year 5, halfway through year 5. And their suggestion was that they would sign him off so we didn't have to worry about attendance. So that was their answer. They didn't know how to get him to school.
Yeah.
They didn't have any other options for me.
So that's pretty much saying from the school, okay, Barley's,
we don't know what to do.
We can't help you anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that takes you into another area though, doesn't it? Are you contacted by other people to say,
no,
okay,
because they gave us permission to stay home. Then we were told about an autism program. So there's a special learning program. So we tried to get in there. That didn't work out for us. And then the other option was, so the education department thought for him it would be better to not go to school at all for the rest of year 6. So they just wrote him off, signed him off at end of year 6. And then we were to go to high school. The whole thing was a schmozzle, unfortunately. And
It's in that whole conversation around our education system. I mean, it's a system that's been in practice and has had, the certain framework for hundreds of years, really, hasn't it? And I know that I talk to teacher friends who talk about the stress already a lot of our teachers are under in dealing with large class sizes and dealing with children who all do have needs. And so you can understand to a degree why it must be so difficult and confronting for our education system to acknowledge there's issues going on here and we're not accommodating all kids.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The class sizes are just too big. So, you can't specialise and give children the relationship they need and, the mentoring that they need when you have so many kids in a class. I mean, that's my opinion. But
so do you think then for children like your own, it actually needs to be a different system in place?
Yeah, I absolutely think that, yeah. So they have what's called an autism special learning program. When we applied for it, and this is the reason it didn't work, because when we applied for it, it was in primary school, it was 8 autistic children in a classroom with 1 teacher and 2 EAs. So they had their own room, so it wasn't in a class of 30, so it wasn't really noisy. The lights were dimmer. They had a different curriculum. And then the year that we were meant to go, they changed it and they put those kids back into mainstream classrooms with an extra EA. And it's like autistic people have very specific sensory needs. They can't be around a lot of noise. They can't be around a lot of stimulation. So for that program to go back into a mainstream class, I was like, it's not going to work for us, unfortunately, and that's why we couldn't access it.
All right. So again, we've got this push for participation and integrating people from many different needs and ideas, but that's simply not going to work in these cases.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So, they've just done a parliamentary inquiry into autism for in schools for children and young people. And that's what came out of it. It doesn't work. It isn't working. So what changes do we need?
Yeah, it's got to be systemic, doesn't it? They have to really start building the foundations for that to be a whole separate education system, really.
Yeah.
For those guys, and then
they have
it side by
needs.
side. Yeah. And
Yeah.
to put them in together is just unfair.
I say to people, it is no different than a physical disability.
Yeah.
Their behaviours are not a choice. They are autistic people. They are not going to change. They can't change. It is who they are. So it's like saying to someone with a wheelchair, I'm sorry, but we're not going to widen the doorway because that fits everybody.
Yes,
so I'm sorry you can't fit in.
Exactly.
But that's the way it is and we're not going to change. It is exactly the same.
Yeah.
And someone once had a go on me on Facebook saying, I don't even remember the saying, but it was something like, are you trying to say an orange is an orange? Or is that the saying? I don't know.
What?
They're basically trying to say, are you trying to say that an autistic person has a disability just as bad as someone in a wheelchair? I'm like, yeah. Actually, they do.
It's a different disability,
It's
but it's a
different.
Disability.
Different, but it is stopping them from accessing an education.
Exactly. And you wouldn't stop someone in a wheelchair having an education.
Access. No.
And it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. And
Absolutely.
And I remember saying that at the school. Just off topic. my son was having a lot of problems with a kid who was diagnosed with autism. And my point to the parents were not handling it, I thought, in a way. I said, why, if their kid is being bullied, not by my son, if he's coming to school every day and it's a battle, why aren't you helping the parents to figure this out? It's a square peg, round hole.
Yeah.
The parents need to know what's happening for their child, because I would hate for that to be my son going into that situation where it's high stress from the minute he gets out of the car.
But that's the thing. The stress doesn't start from the minute they get out of the car. The stress starts from the minute they wake up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the schools don't realise that. They don't realise by the time the child actually comes to school, they're already done. You know, so when they're walking through that door, they're already lost because they are so anxious about going to school. I used to get woken up at 6 a.m. What teacher do I have today? What subjects do I have today? Will you be there? Like, when are you going to be there? Like, just the hammering from 6 a.m. So by the time I got them to school, and we were always late, and of course, teachers like to, or the school likes to blame the parent for that. It's like, I'm late
it's all very
because
scheduled,
my
isn't it?
child is dragging their heels because they actually don't want to be here. So stop putting the blame on the parents and start thinking, what can we do to make the kids want to be at school?
You're doing the best job that you can do under the circumstances. So, give us a little bit more support and action. Yeah, okay. So, and along with all this going on, school refuser, etc., I mean, of course, we're told how it's vital in life to get ahead. We need an education. Your kids need to meet certain specific levels. So you've got that stress as well going on amongst it all. How are you dealing with all that? Did you just have to put that to the side?
I did. So all of my children are highly intelligent. So I never, ever had a worry that they weren't going to do well in life, education, intelligence-wise. But when we were at the second school that we went to with the twins, I basically said, I don't want them to get a report. I don't care about, I said, this sounds really mean, but I don't care about their education. Yeah. I only care about their social, because if we're not meeting their social, they're never going to learn. Yeah. So that had to come first. So I said, I don't want them tested. I don't want reports. My focus is on them being here, because that was step one. Yeah, and the rest will come. They're intelligent little kids.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know Sid can probably really, appreciate and about that scenario, because when Sid was going through with her epilepsy, Sid, you dropped out of the education system for almost 2 years.
Yeah, and you're talking about, struggling to get to school. I remember the night before, because I had a super, I think it was clinical anxiety.
Yeah.
The night before, I'd be stressing about going to school, how I'm going to act around people, if I'm going to be able to wake up in the morning to go to school. And then going to school, I'd be stressing. Walking into a class, I'd be stressing. Sitting there, wondering if they're going to ask questions or anything. I would just be stressing the entire time. And so then I just stopped going. I couldn't deal with the stress of all that. And as well with my epilepsy, I was worried about having mini seizures and everything. So we actually went to the doctor and got a...
Yeah. So we got to the same point as Sid saying that it's too stressful for both your child. You're looking at your child going through literally every day such devastating emotional trauma, and then you're looking at yourself going, I can't keep doing this every day. So we did step away. We got doctor signed off, and we did find alternative avenues further down the track. But it's interesting, Sid has not, lost anything from being taken out of that system that simply wasn't working for your child.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And there are different ways of learning, and there are different ways of getting to where you want to go. Like, there's different pathways, but schools tend to focus very heavily on you have to have a Year 12 certificate. You know, that is, if you don't do that, you're never going to succeed in life, and that's absolutely not true. There's so many different pathways.
You're right. It's not everyone's journey to go through that very stringent academic, focused, pathways through education.
Yeah. And that's another thing I struggled with, because I was like, that's always what I was taught in school, that I need to pass Year 12, I need to do all that so that I can, graduate and go do things in life. So until I was older, I didn't realise that there was like other pathways. I wouldn't be a failure if I didn't finish school.
Yeah,
and that is, isn't it? That sense of. So where does it sit? How on earth do you? I can't imagine homeschooling. Myself, because
So everyone asks me that, and I would not be sane if I was homeschooling. We do what's called unschooling. So unschooling basically is child-led learning. Now that, again, the same as my kids not being at school, that is not my choice. I'm just going along with what my children need. So with autism, there are different profiles. and my children have the profile called PDA, so pathological demand avoidance. Basically, how that is different to typically presenting autism is they have an extreme demand avoidance personality. So if you ask them to do something, they can't do it. That's the disability. They can't do something where they have lost their autonomy and their control, which means it's very difficult to teach them because everything has to be their idea. So, oh goodness, my alarm's going off.
Oh, that's all right.
So for instance, this morning, I'm not going to be in the home, which is very unusual, and my younger twins have very high separation anxiety. So the support worker's running through, what can we do today? Because she's trying to get their mind off it and try and do fun things. Should we go get a hot chocolate? Should we go get a milkshake? Should we, go to Kmart? Like everything's no. Not because none of those things are fun or because they're dangerous or whatever, but if they aren't the ones choosing and driving it, their anxiety is so high unless they're the ones deciding on things. So unfortunately, I can't homeschool in what people typically think homeschooling would be like. We have homeschool moderators through the education department, and they see this all the time, so they're very understanding. They know I'm not just being some lazy parent sitting down watching movies all day. If only I had the time for that. They do understand this profile. So in the UK, they've done studies. Australia doesn't have any studies on this, but 70% of children with the PDA profile will have school refusal. 70%. Yeah, because from the second you get to school, there's demands. The demand to greet somebody, the demand to look them in the eye, the demand to sit still, the demand to pull out your work, the demand to sit next to someone you don't want to, the demands of the sensory demands. Like from the second they get there, they have absolutely no control over their day. They're not allowed to go to the toilet when they want to go to the toilet.
I've not thought about it like that before.
Yeah. So school for neurotypical people can be annoying, but for someone with a demand avoidance personality, it's crippling. Yeah. So the Home Education Network in Australia, they had about 500 people complete a survey, and they asked, because the Australian government or the education department does not track why people are not at school. So when you enroll for homeschooling, they do not actually track anything to do with disability. There's actually not even a box on the form to tick to say I'm leaving due to disability. So I was a little cheeky and I drew my own box and I ticked it and I wrote disability because they're not tracking it because then they're not accountable.
Wow. Okay.
So out of 500 people who completed the survey, 80% were there due to being neurodiverse with a disability.
All right, those statistics blow me away, and there's an opportunity for some real insight into what's going on simply for the want of a question on that.
Just
on the form. They don't ask, they don't know.
I just think that's really interesting data, and someone who's neurotypical, not neurotypical, is diverse, would love to sink their teeth into that data and really deep dive and do. To me, it's just common sense to be
for them to not even be tracking it. Is what blows my mind. Yeah. I'm like, so you don't even know why people are leaving your system?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right. There's an opportunity there for someone to jump in and go and sort that study out. Absolutely. So, when you talk about then, how do you put towards your children when you're allowing them to drive?
Yeah. So
the learning.
Yeah. So people have this idea of what they think education is. You don't teach people to be intelligent. People are intelligent, and then you fuel that with their interests, basically. So, they want to make cookies. Great, we'll go and make cookies, and then you sort of get them to write the list. You get them to do the measurements. You get them to work out things. My kids might not be able to write a report for school, but they can cook for themselves, they can make their own omelettes, their own everything. They're very self-sufficient people,
It's interesting. I was listening to a conversation with a couple of old boomers, and they were talking about what they perceive to be the lack of common sense in people just going about and making simple, straightforward questions and understanding the basics. And we kind of, as you say, talk about intelligence and structure it. But for goodness sake, just go out and experience day-to-day scenarios, and that's a real good education in itself.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
we're missing that.
Yeah, and then they've got their own interests. So, one's right into space. So, they know exactly when something in the sky is doing the other thing. They'll come and tell me what's going on. They self-taught French, Korean, those Duolingo apps on the phone. So if they're interested, they'll just run off and do it.
That's cool.
I've got one child who is extremely artistic, so she's always drawing and clay and painting, and so they have their own interests, and you just have to run with their interests. Someone said, I heard about this book that I wanted to read. I'm out to get the book. So I'm not directing them, but I'm there. When whatever they need, I'm there to help implement.
Embracing the directions that they're going.
Yeah.
Because as you say, that it's what they want to do.
Yeah. And my older child, she's at it was called the Bunbury Regional Community College. They've just changed the name to the Southwest Community College. And they have what's called the Big Picture Australia program. So when I did my submission to the parliamentary inquiry, I really focused on this program because it's a real, it would work very, very well for autistic people, especially with the pathological demand avoidance profile. So at that school, they wear their own clothes. So for autistic people, they're very sensory. So if you're I went to private school, so I was itchy for 12 years. Because the clothing that we had to wear didn't meet my sensory needs. And I was always told I was exaggerating, I'm a drama queen. No, as an adult, if I went to buy some thermals the other day and I tried on one with wool, oh my God, I had to get it off within 2 seconds because I was itchy. And I was like, oh my God, I had to wear something like that for 12 years and no one believed me.
Yeah.
They all thought it was me. And that's what I said, finding out you're autistic, you're like, oh my God. It's not just me. There are other people out there.
Yeah, because
with
if
the
you
same
could make it
needs.
easy, you would make it easy, wouldn't you?
Would. Absolutely. No one wants to complain. So they wear their own clothes. So that's a really good start. They actually call their teachers by their first name, and they call the school principal by their first name. So that cuts out the authoritarian style. It's actually more of a relationship, and a friendship rather than I'm the teacher and you're the student.
That's what I liked at TAFE.
Absolutely.
You
When you actually
yourself.
feel like you're more treated as an equal, you're on the same foot with someone, you have an actual relationship with them, not being told what to do and
trapped in this system.
Yeah. So that works really well. And then they have what's called child-led learning. So they don't have subjects at that school. So my daughter's been there since year 10. She's now in year 12. And every term you get to choose your topic. So you do a project on a topic and they incorporate, okay, well, in that you've learnt maths because you did this and you've learnt history because you've done that, and you've done English because you've done that, but it's all around the one project. And then, so my daughter's studied Korea, she's studied poetry, marine biology. She did a project on the mental health of Batman.
That's so
know,
cool.
so,
Oh my
yeah,
God. How
so-
is Batman?
Well, we all
yeah.
know. But what it is when they're interested in something, they will deep dive and they will find out stuff and they will, do their absolute best because they're interested. But if you told her to go study Adolf Hitler and she didn't care about Adolf Hitler, of course kids aren't going to do their best. They see especially autistic people, because autistic people need to know why they're doing something. And it needs to make sense to them, and it needs to be for a reason. They don't like small talk, if they don't see the need to say hello to someone, they won't. People think that's rude, but they're just saying, but why do I have to? And so when they're told to study things in school that they're not interested in, that's why they don't do well. Not because they're not intelligent. We have to focus on their strengths, not try and make everyone conform into a little box and say, but you all have to learn that.
So this is kind of I don't know if you want to answer this one. Are your children going to be able to leave home? Are you confident for their future? How are you feeling? I mean, that's probably really intense, but just you're working obviously to get them where they need to go to be healthy and adults and have a great life.
Yes.
And it's how confident are you that
that's a tricky one because they are all different. So, you know, some I'm a lot more confident that they're going to reach the milestones. Others, I think it's just going to take a lot longer and a lot more supports in place. And, you know, we are very, very fortunate in Australia to have the NDIS. So, you know, they will have supports in place. But they're quite young still.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't think my role as a parent is going to end as soon as, not that you ever stop being a parent, I don't mean that, but I don't think my responsibilities are going to end as soon as other people's might. I think mine will go a lot longer.
I imagine during this journey of yours, you've probably sat down in a corner a few times and had a good cry, Tanya.
Just a few times, yeah.
How do you do that? How do you get through that? What do you say something to yourself? How do you do it?
I tell myself I'm allowed to cry because, you know, I think you try very hard, and I'm a single parent, so, you know, you try to.
Are you a single parent?
Yeah. So you try really hard to always put your children's needs first. I mean, that's what every parent does.
Yeah.
And so you don't really allow yourself those moments of weakness, but sometimes they happen whether you want them to or not. And they could be the smallest thing, you know, so you can be really strong and you can, you know, get through really big things, and then something tiny will happen and all of a sudden you just, you know, just a mess. So
Breaks you.
yeah.
Do you take time for yourself? Do you get time for yourself?
I do. So my twins go to their dads every weekend. He's great like that. So, you know, they're the hard ones because they're the youngest. You know, the youngest always demand so much more attention. And then the older kids, you know, they're a lot older now. So, they don't need as much from you when they get older.
What would you be saying to someone who's listening to this and is recognising some of the things that you're saying? Is there something you would tell people?
Actually, I would say don't listen to society. Do what you know is right for your own family. Yeah, because, you know, it's very easy to judge when you're not in that situation. But don't put the pressure of other people's expectations on you. I mean, I tried really hard to keep my kids in school, like, you know, 2.5 years of trying. And I mean, you know, endless appointments with the education department and the lead psychologists and, you know, everything. And I tried really hard, and you just have to listen to your own kids and do what's right for them, basically.
How did you build up enough Teflon to wipe off what I'm sure you perceived as being judgment from friends, from family, from the system? Like, did you just get to a point where you just thought, I can't listen to this, I can't let it impact me?
Basically. I mean, what do? You can't keep beating your head against a brick wall. You know, you can only do. I think the biggest thing is that my children are happier now. You know, so instead of dragging them to school every day crying, and I don't, you know, I've seen comments on Facebook. They're not said to me personally, but, you know, you do see comments from people, things like, you know, just make them go to school, or, you know, just a bit of tough love, or, you know, they just need this or whatever. And it's like, do you think we haven't tried those things? We have. I don't even know where I was going to go with that. But what people don't realise is that school refusal is not a kid who can't be bothered getting out of bed or who just wants to sit on their PlayStation. You know, for us, because my kids were a lot younger, it is biting, kicking, hitting, swearing, running away, hiding under the bed, hiding in cupboards, you know, hiding under blankets. So these are kids in real distress. This is not a kid going, I don't feel like going to school and I'm going, whatever. You know, these are kids that are just in absolute distress. And if you're not listening to them, you're not doing them justice.
And again, it gets back to being your child's advocate.
Yeah.
Because you need to be there every day fighting for them to give them the best life they can have.
Absolutely. And so now that as soon as I said, because we had, a break from school, and then we found a new school, and then they had a break, and then they went back to that one, and then they had another break, and the school was pressuring us. They're like, are you coming back or are you not? Because our attendance is getting affected, and I had to make a decision. And so I talked to the kids about it, and when I said to them, I will never ask you to go back to school again, we will homeschool, the instant relief on their face, the instant pressure removal, you could tell that we made the right decision. Yeah. And I would change it if I could. I would love for my kids to be able to go and fit in and have the social life that all the other kids have and do sports and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, it's not them.
It's coming to terms with that, isn't it?
Yeah.
As a parent as well, because I know I went through, similar with Sid in just being so devastated that with a chronic illness and then the mental health aspects of it, you're kind of grieving what could have been to a degree, which is really, really tough to come to terms with.
I have a Facebook memory that comes up every year, and it's the first year that the twins went to school. So I had a photo of all 6 of my children in their school uniforms, the smiles on the faces, the little, LOL lunch boxes and everything. And it comes up every year and it crushes me because, every year it's a reminder of what you expected as a parent. So, it is what it is, and, you have to get through and I love my kids. I love my family more than anything. But you have expectations when you go into a parenting journey of what you think it's going to be. So when it doesn't meet that and everyone else seems to have that, you're like, well, it's a bit of a grieving process. And
Yeah, it is. I understand exactly what you're saying. And combined with a lot of what other people are saying, and it becomes a heavy weight to carry, let alone for your kids. So bless you, because you do. You get out there, you fight for your kids.
Absolutely.
And you want them to have the best that they can possibly have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to let go of what you think's best for them, and let them have their life.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh, we can have such conformed ideas of what needs to be the right way, but it's often not.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky in the era that we're living in because, the jobs that people have today weren't around 50 years ago, so they can literally sit in their bedroom and still make $1 million if they wanted to.
Go to it, Sid.
It's true,
Absolutely.
People have this, and what you were saying earlier before we got on air was that, school has only been around the way that it is for 100 years or 150 years, something like that, with the Industrial Revolution, because we were all being trained to work in a factory. You had to start at a certain time, finish at a certain time. Everyone has breaks at a certain time. Everyone learns the same thing because they were training us to go and work in a factory back then. And obviously it's not the case now, but we don't need to all be the same.
No, our
the jobs that are out there are just
so vast, and they have they've moved on. They've developed so far removed from, as you say, what in our initial education system was set up for.
And the education system hasn't caught up with how fast society has changed.
Yeah, and the scope of people that are now coming through the education system.
Yeah.
It's like you've got your own not institutions, but school. You've done what needs to be done. And that's a little microcosm that the education department can look at and go, oh, look. And it's not just one child or 2 children. You've got 7 that you are raising and teaching, and that's the model. Well, that's the model that they should be looking at.
Flexibility.
Yeah.
Flexibility.
Tanya's education.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I'd love if they'd listen to me.
Maybe the system needs to come around to your place, Tanya, and take notes.
I wrote them a big submission, and I know that it was quoted a few times and it was referenced a few times, which, I was pretty happy about. So,
can I ask, what was your background before you had children? Were you a teacher or were you?
Oh, goodness, no. So I left school myself in year 10. I knew that the pressure of exams was too big for me. I have a lot of anxiety over, I can know a lot of things, but as soon as you tell me it's a test, my brain's gotten up and walked away. So I was like, no way can I do TE, I think it was back then.
Yeah, it was.
So I left and I did accounting and bookkeeping, a certificate in that, and then I went to work, and then I had my first child at 21. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, I've been doing this a long time. And then I went back and retrained in bookkeeping again because I hadn't worked for such a long time. And then my kids got school refusal, so I didn't use it. And then I trained as a life coach, and I started up a part-time business, and then my other kid got school refusal, so I had to abandon that. And I've actually just signed up last week to do a master's in autism studies
Oh, wow.
at uni. So going back to uni at the age of 49.
Go you.
I know,
That is
right?
excellent.
See,
Love it.
you can get in. You don't have to have finished school. I haven't been accepted yet. So
You'll be fine.
I
You've got all
really
this
hope so.
recognition of
Yeah,
prior learning right
that's-
there. You should probably
Yeah,
get it.
so most master's degrees, you actually have to have a bachelor's before you can do a master's. But with the autism studies, they recognise lived experience, which is incredible.
Fabulous.
They're saying, actually, you have a bachelor's just by having lived as
Yeah.
an autistic person your whole life. So
There you go.
yeah, so I'm hoping I get in and everything that I've learnt over the last 5 years, I can formalise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and help other people when my kids are
and
old
and then
enough.
they can start to read your well, it's not a thesis, it's not, well, kind of it is, isn't it? They can read it and go, this is a really good framework for us. This woman's done all this research in her lived experience.
Yeah.
Let's listen to her.
I hope so.
How would you say the last, few years has changed you as a mother and a person?
I care less what other people think of me. I think, I don't know if it's everyone, if it was just me. I think it's a lot of people. We really care about what other people think of us, and we don't put our own needs first, and that's changed. I have to put the kids first. What else? Probably your world gets smaller because you stop trying to please everybody. So, you've only got a certain amount of what you can do. So I think you stop trying to people please and trying to keep everyone happy and just kind of focus on your kids and your family. And yeah.
It's the gaining of wisdom, isn't it? And it's really interesting when we talk to women, week after week after week, and it's that ability to actually start not caring
And listening to
to a
yourself
degree.
for a
And
change.
yeah, it's really quite a journey, and often it seems we need to go through some profound experiences before we actually get it.
That's very true.
If only all the
The
youngins
universe
out
is
there,
like, you weren't listening, I'm going to give you a lesson.
so all you youngins out there, listen to it. Yeah, listen to yourself.
Yeah.
And stop caring about what people are saying or doing.
Yeah.
Be authentic to your own self.
Absolutely.
It's a real journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite quote?
I
Or
have three. Yes, I did say I couldn't just pick one. And a lady on your other podcast that I listened to stole the one that I love, which was, just keep swimming.
That's such a good one.
Oh, absolutely. So there's I think he's a psychologist, I'm not really sure, but his name's Dr. Ross Green, and his favourite quote of mine is, children do well if they can.
Oh,
So stop looking at a child and thinking that they're just choosing to behave badly, because if they could do it, they would do it. So look, and then the next quote, I know there's, I have so many quotes, but all behaviour is communication. So a behaviour is actually a byproduct of what's happening for someone. So you can't just look at the behaviour and go, they did this. They ran out of the room. How do we stop them running out of a room? Okay, we'll do. No, what happened for that person? They're communicating to you that something's not right for them. So you've actually got to look at what is the behaviour communicating, not at the behaviour. And then the third one would be being autistic means being different, not less.
oh, that.
Yeah, that's a beautifully
That's amazing.
profound quote.
Yeah.
I like that.
I've held it together. There was a couple of times there, and now you're going to make me
and
cry.
you held
again.
it
Yeah,
together so well too.
And that's the thing too, is that you have to put on a brave face and you have to keep going. And, I don't want anyone to think I think of my kids as a burden, because they're not. It's just that life is different than what I expected. So, I don't get to go to work. I need to be home full time with the kids, and we can't have people in the home because, sensory needs, they can't have a lot of sound around. So it is hard personally, but it's not Yeah.
And again, it's about scratching that surface because there's always so much more going on once you start asking a few questions.
And a lot more that I definitely couldn't say on camera, you know.
Now, if you have been affected by any of the topics in this discussion or you have more questions, we will leave links below. And if you have any links that you would like us to put down, we can as well.
Sure.
And thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You for having me. I appreciate it.
We really appreciate you opening up and telling us about your journey, Tanya.
And always remember,
Every day.
You are remarkable.